Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been an ongoing franchise since 1998 and has evolved from a dark manga about a lonely teenage boy who likes board games to one of the most successful trading card games ever released. One of the most diverse ways to enjoy this franchise, however, comes in the form of video games, which have varied mechanics, stories, and way to ogle cool monster designs. So let's take a walk through different kinds of games that exist throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's 20-year history, going from 1998 all the way through to 2021. And let's see exactly how we got here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 2 Dark Duel Stories was released on July 8th, 1999. By this point, Japan had seen OCG PAX Volumes 1, 2, and 3, and were about 3 weeks away from receiving Volume 4. Fans had also been introduced to the game that would finally be the origin point of the game played today, by releasing the starter box in tandem with the theatrical release of Yu-Gi-Oh! The Movie, which featured updated character designs, as well as the official name change of the card game from Monsters and Warriors to Duel Monsters, plus the first visual use of fusion summoning. While players were being introduced to some of the basic mechanics of the soon-to-be enormous trading card game, a sequel was developed, and released and functioned virtually identically to the first game, rather than the rules being presented for the physical card game. Dark Duel Stories included one of several possible promotional cards, which included notable game pieces like Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, Cyber Shield, Kunai with Chain, and even Salamandra, Acid Trap Hole, and Seiryu, the set of promotional cards that came with Western releases of Duel Monsters 3, which ironically shares this game's subtitle. These were, finally, cards that could be included in a real Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck that could actually be played with friends. The game would not be seen outside Japan, but this is one of the last releases where that's true. Duel Monsters 2 maintains a lot of connective tissue with the first Duel Monsters game, but with a few key changes, as well as some quality of life improvements. For one thing, you are no longer required to play a card on each turn, and you can end your turn at any point. This means that you are also no longer required to attack with each attack position card, or change each card to defense position. And this means strategy can also start to actually develop for real. You can even choose not to play a card or attack or change position at all, just full on pass your turn. Each player still starts with 8,000 life points, and you still lose when you get to 0. And you also still lose if you run out of cards, but since you can end your turn without doing anything, it seems unlikely that you would ever deck yourself out. A new mechanic for balancing purposes is introduced in this game in the form of the deck cost and duelist level. Your deck cost is the limit of total points allowed in your deck, as each card you put in has a cost, which is equivalent to the duelist level required to even put it in your deck in the first place. Your duelist level is a value that increases by 1 with each subsequent victory. For instance, a card like Axe Raider, which has a pretty sizable attack for an early point in the game, cannot even be placed in the deck until your duelist level is 28 or higher. Every card in the game has this value, and is a much more elegant means of balancing your deck to your opponents throughout the course of your journey. The final result of all these changes and improvements is a game that takes the player much more seriously, and consequently asks for a much deeper investment of time from the player. While much of this title is still big number better than smaller number or water beat fire, the expansion of the fusion system, ritual monsters, and trap cards invited some pieces of interaction that were sorely missed from the comparatively simple Duel Monsters 1. Just like in the first game, this game features an ability to trade in battle with another proud owner of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 2. And also just like the first game, if you defeat your opponent in battle, then they can take any one card from your trunk. A very exciting prospect that I'm sure never actually occurred to anyone, because they would just switch off the Game Boy to end communication once they knew they had lost. However, with each new edition, at least one must be questionable, and this game's unfortunate debut for one of the weirdest mechanics in this game is the alignment system. We'll see more of this in some later games as well, but essentially what it means is that each monster is placed onto an alignment chart belonging to one of several elements. These elements are Shadow, Light, Fiend, and Dream, roughly translated, and a second spectrum comprised of Fire, Forest, Wind, Earth, Thunder, and Water, again roughly translated. These are more or less the types monsters can have in the official card game, but unlike the OCG, a card with a superior alignment can straight up destroy a monster, no damage calculation, no matter the attack or defense value. This means that even the mighty Blue Eyes White Dragon can be destroyed by, of all things, Kuriboh. That being said, the alignment table created a much more flexible system for determining what monsters can fuse into, rather than the bespoke combinations of cards that could make other cards from the first game. This means that a Dragon-y type monster can fuse with a Thunder-y type monster to make Thunder Dragon. You can also fuse an Aqua monster with a Thunder monster to create Bolt Escargot. There are also some canon fusions that will produce iconic monsters from the manga like Baby Dragon and Time Wizard making Thousand Dragon. Ritual monsters were introduced in this game, which allowed you to tribute monsters to your field to summon a stronger monster in exchange. Ritual monsters had yet to be introduced in the official card game, so some ritual monsters in this game, including my all-time favorite Yu-Gi-Oh monster, Serpent Knight Dragon, would never see the light of day as a ritual monster. Rather, they would just become standard monsters. These rituals, however, set the brief trend in Yu-Gi-Oh video games of requiring obscenely specific monster combinations in order to summon the monster, which, by the way, is not a monster that could exist in your deck. They could only be played by activating a ritual spell card attributing the required monsters, and then the ritual monster would just apparate onto your field. And if your ritual spell fizzled, it would remove itself from your trunk entirely. The game includes all cards from the previous entry, as well as 355 additional cards for this new one, which feature, for the first time in the series, ritual and trap cards. A single trap card may be played on your field. Grandpa can also occasionally show up after a duel instead of Anzu, Taya doesn't exist yet, leave me alone, to give you a more rare card, but this is entirely random. Cards still don't have levels, not even in a cosmetic sense, so tributes have yet to be established in the video games, but the presentation of these cards is even more colorful in this iteration considering that, well, this game is fully in color this time around. What's extra fun about this is that while some of the artwork had to be edited in order to play better on a small Game Boy screen, the color palette used for the physical cards was used to color the cards themselves, to make these cards even more recognizable at first glance. This game introduces a mechanic known as communication fusion, which allows you to fuse monsters using a link cable and a copy of another Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters game. By choosing 2 or more materials and a catalyst monster, such as Monster Egg, Change Slime, or Job Change Mirror, you could end up getting extremely powerful monsters such as Harpy Lady Sisters, Black Skull Dragon, or even Meteor Black Dragon. There are communication fusion results for any combination of fusion material with the required catalyst monster, and a transference from one Duel Monsters game to another, all the way up to Duel Monsters 3, which is pretty ambitious for Game Boy games that serve as spin-offs even at this early stage. This game also had 2 guides printed and sold as a means of providing information to players about card drops, passwords, and general strategy for getting better at the game. Additionally, for the price of your fun video game book, you received a promotional card inside, and the cards for these guides were the left and right arms of the Forbidden One, 2 of the 5 pieces of Exodia. This game, much like the previous entry, has you face off against multiple duelists from the manga Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist with some new faces like the Paradox Brothers, Mako, and Mokuba. One of the final boss characters is once again Pegasus, with an additional stage afterwards in which you could face Dark Yugi, or one of several new characters, including Ishizu, Shadi, and Evil Bakura. Although there is an element to chance of which duelist you're actually able to face after each victory. You advance in each stage by, once again, defeating each duelist in a stage 5 times. Additionally, we are joined once again by our mysterious friend, Simon Murin, who will have his more fruitful debut for our video game retrospective very soon. While the first iteration was vaguely centered around Duelist Kingdom, this game is sort of nebulous in its setting as it does not quite take place in Battle City either. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 2 serves as an excellent sequel to the original, with all sorts of additional mechanics, new balancing techniques, and even more monster spells and now traps to collect and battle with friends and family. It also helped create a fun, exciting world for people to look forward to interacting with. This game was the second release in a quadrilogy of 4 Duel Monsters branded video games that we'll discover all basically are pretty unto themselves in terms of their mechanics. I hope you've enjoyed this ride through the second of our Duel Monsters flavored video games and look forward to seeing our next game, which is actually not Duel Monsters 3, but rather one of the most iconic Yu-Gi-Oh! Games of all time. I'll see you in the next one.